Well, we're getting close to the end of the week, and so we have Acts 2:20 through 21 today. In the flow of Acts 2, Peter is speaking to the crowd on the day of Pentecost. The whole town has heard the mighty rushing wind. They've heard the people speaking in their languages, and they've come together, and they said, maybe these guys are drunk, and Peter says, no, they're not drunk. And Peter is quoting from Joel. So this is a quote from the Septuagint. As we'll see later on next week, I think, we'll see that in Acts, Peter quotes the Septuagint. Now, there are those, of course, who argue, well, of course, Peter would have spoken in Greek because the crowds are from all over the world, and thus he would have spoken Greek. And so it makes sense for him to quote the Greek Septuagint. And that is, of course, the point, is that the way that the Greek is quoted, not here in Joel, but a little bit later on from the Psalms, is from the Greek Septuagint and not from the Hebrew original. And so, to me, this doesn't bother me because history writing at the time I believe it is a modern preoccupation and of modern concerns to say, no, this must be the ipsissima verba, the very words that Peter spoke. That I think is just not the way ancient history writing wrote. It is not an error. There's no error here. It's simply a mistaken standard. It is imposing our categories on the biblical categories. It was simply completely acceptable. Certainly paraphrase was completely acceptable. Well, I'm getting off. Okay, see if you can pronounce this. Okay, here's my pronunciation. Ho helios metastrophesatai skotos kai he selena means moon, ace hyma prine elphane hemeron kuriu tain megalane kai epiphane. Verse 21. Kai estai pas hos ean epikalesetai to onoma kuriu sothesatai. Okay, now see if you can pronounce it while I drink. I mean, translate. Were you able to translate it? Here's my translation. The sun, the helium, the helios, the sun will be changed. The sun will be turned into darkness. Metastrepho, it will be turned, transformed into darkness. And the moon into blood before the to come day of the Lord. This is an infinitive game. I'll talk about it in the third slide. But basically, before the to come, the day. This is an infinitive game. We have to put it in our Greek pipe and smoke it. Put it in our Greek computer, and it comes out before the day comes. Prine infinitive is a temporal construction, infinitive of time, you might call it. Then the subject, quote unquote, of an infinitive is in the accusative case. So it's the day that's coming. Before the day to come, before the day comes, before the day of the Lord comes. So before the day of the Lord, which is the day of judgment, before the day of judgment comes, the moon will be turned to darkness, and the sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood. Of course, I suspect that we're talking about an eclipse here and a blood moon. So these are signs. It's not meant to be taken literally. Certainly wasn't meant to be taken literally in the original passage in Joel. I don't think it's meant literally here. In fact, this may be referring to the day of Pentecost. I mean, what is Peter talking about? Peter's saying, what's going on here? Well, this is the Joel. This is the sun darkened, moon turned to blood stuff. Certainly G.B. Caird, in his book, The Language and Imagery of the Bible, which is out of print because Caird died in the 80s, but it's a great book if you can get it used. It's a really good book on understanding metaphor and allegory and things like that. We just, in our culture, are very literalist and cognitive. These sorts of images, I think, sometimes elude us. Well, anyway, before the to come, the day of the Lord, that is the great and terrible Wizard of Oz. No, the great and terrible day of the Lord. I bet that's where the Wizard of Oz got their phrase, the great and terrible. So this is the great and epiphane. I think of epiphany. It's coming. It's here. And it will be everyone who ever will call or should call on the name of the Lord will be saved. This is an interesting construction, but we'll talk about it in the next page, and that is the page of the interlinear. So the sun will be turned into darkness. I think this is future, of course, because of the sigma. But I believe that there's a missing theta here. We call these second aorist passives. Second aorist passives tend to be breathy words, like the three breathy consonants are and key. And so words whose stem ends in a phi, I think, tend to be second aorist passive. What that means is when you would normally have a theta eta in the aorist passive, you don't. The theta says, there's enough spit around here, I'm leaving. So, by the way, I'm not sure that the phi was originally pronounced that way. It may have been more of an explosive P sound, like Latin. But anyway, not important. So future passive, indicative. Actually, it's future middle. Is it future? No, future passive. Good grief. I misparsed it on the next page. The sun will be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the to come the day. Don't ask me why the word or is here, or than. This word can also mean then, before than to come. It just, languages do what languages do. We just accept it. Ours is not to question why. Ours is just to memorize or die. Okay, so into blood, before the to come the day of the Lord, the great and magnificent, incredible, Epiphanius day of the Lord. And it will be that everyone who ever calls on the name of the Lord. Okay, so Has normally introduces a relative clause. An usually introduces a conditional clause. So by itself, hos would be translated who. By itself, an would be translated if. When you have it together, we call that a conditional relative clause, and we translate it whoever. Sometimes Greek does this whoever construction, and in English we just have to translate it who. I've noticed that in certain parts of the South, there can be a tendency to put a ever on a word. Like I had a roommate who used to say, whenever I was 3 years old, which I learned that wasn't proper way of saying it. Sometimes Greek does that. Sometimes Greek will say whoever when it just means who. But in this case, I think it is a genuine whoever. Everyone whoever calls on the name of the Lord. Now this is subjunctive. I knew it was going to be subjunctive. This eta is what tells me it's subjunctive, because subjunctive fries the connecting vowel right before the ending. But the an, I knew I was going to have a subjunctive because an always takes a subjunctive verb. So conditional relative clauses take a subjunctive verb. So this is subjunctive. Now, sigma normally means future, but that's just in the indicative. In the subjunctive, a sigma means aorist. So this is an aorist, middle, subjunctive, third singular from epikaleo. Okay? Everyone who ever calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Okay, this is a genuine theta, eta, passive, sigma, future, future passive, indicative, third singular from sozo. Okay, parsing I've already done, but here it is again. So I believe this is from Metastrepho. I didn't look it up, but I'm pretty sure it is. Again, this is future passive. The theta is missing, but I have the sigma that tells me it's future. It's third singular. Okay, will be changed. Okay, prin a. This is an infinitive of time. Prin a infinitive. With the prin, it's a prior time. Another way to make this construction is pra to with the infinitive. Elthane is from Erchomai, and here's a little parsing. This is an aorist active infinitive is what AAN means in my nomenclature. Aorist because of the elf, it's the aorist of Erchomai. Active because ain is an active ending. 6 out of the 7 infinitives end in I, and the other ending is ain. And there's the ain. and then N stands for infinitive. The quote-unquote subject of an infinitive is in the accusative case. Okay, and I've already told you that this is a conditional relative clause. This particular form I've already told you is aorist because the sigma in the subjunctive, sigma means aorist. In the indicative, a sigma means future. But there is no future subjunctive. So middle, because of the tie, and then subjunctive, S, third singular. Okay, one more word. So thesatai is future passive because of the theta eta sigma, indicative because of the epsilon, third singular from sozo. There you have it, verses 20 and 21, and we're almost done with this week's Greek.